Welcome to today's 5-minute Bible study in the book of Deuteronomy. Today we are concluding our study of this wonderful book, looking at the last few verses of the book. That's Deuteronomy chapter 34, verses 9 through 12. We saw in yesterday's session that Moses, as instructed by the Lord, had climbed Mount Nebo to view the promised land. And there he died, and the Lord buried him. And these last few verses of the book are really kind of the epitaph for Moses. We don't know where his grave was. Obviously, there's no tombstone, but if there had been, this might have been what would have been written on it. This is really his epitaph to a life lived as a servant of the Lord. So notice how the book of Deuteronomy and the books of Moses, which are the first 5 books of the Bible, notice how they conclude with these few verses. Now Joshua, the son of Nun, was filled with the spirit of wisdom because Moses had laid his hands on him. So the Israelites listened to him and did what the Lord had commanded Moses. Remember, of course, that Moses had commissioned Joshua to be his successor. He would lead the Israelites. And so by laying hands on him, he conferred authority upon Joshua, who would now take that authority and lead the children into the promised land. And again, talking about Moses, verse 10. Since then, that is, since the days of Moses, no prophet has risen in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face, who did all those signs and wonders the Lord sent him to do in Egypt, to Pharaoh and all of his officials, to the whole land. For no one has ever shown the mighty power or performed the awesome deeds that Moses did in the sight of all Israel. So the epitaph clearly states that there had never been one like Moses before, or when these words were written up until that day. Never been a prophet like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. There was a intimacy of relationship that God and Moses had. Moses had gone up into the cloud on the mountain and, as it were, had seen God face to face. It's talking about the depth of their relationship. You remember the times when Moses would come down from the mountain and his face would be shining with the glory of God. That's what's being described here. This is kind of relationship that Moses had with the Lord. And of course, it emphasizes the signs and wonders performed through Moses by the Lord in the land of Egypt as God broke the back of the Egyptian empire with the plagues and delivered the children of Israel from slavery in Egypt. Now we know we're told in the book of Exodus that this was a spiritual warfare and that God was declaring war upon the gods of Egypt. All those idols and false gods the Egyptians worshiped, God was showing through the signs and wonders his superiority over them. He was showing that he and he alone was God. All that was shown through the ministry of Moses, through the signs and the wonders, the mighty power performed in the sight of Egypt as God delivered the Israelites from slavery to the Egyptians and brought them out. There had never been, and in the Old Testament never was, a prophet like Moses. Until the time of Jesus, there would not be. Of course, when Jesus comes, when he came, he was one like Moses, and signs and wonders accompanied him as he brought the second covenant, the new covenant, the deliverance from slavery to sin. So as we said yesterday, Moses was a foreshadowing, a prophetic foreshadowing of the one who was to come, the Son of God, who would deliver us from slavery to sin and death. And so concludes the book of Deuteronomy and the story of Moses. I hope you've enjoyed this study. We've been with it for a number of weeks now. Deuteronomy is such a fascinating book. Moses' final words to the children of Israel. I hope you join us for our next 5-minute Bible study. We're going to go back to the New Testament, and our next study will be in the book of Ephesians, the book of Ephesians. So we'll begin to post that Bible study on Monday, May the 6th. So I hope you'll join us for our 5-minute Bible study in the book of Ephesians that begins on Monday, May the 6th.